Welcome to another episode of Blacktop. I'm here. It's your boy Cass.
On my day.
Our day, we're here. We're at the playoffs, the Eastern Conference, Western Conference. It's looking like Milwaukee is going to be worse than Magic in the first round. Heat versus Pacers in the first round. Celtics versus the Sixers. Raptors versus the Nets. Lakers versus Grizzlies. Rockets against the Thunder. The Nuggets versus the Jazz. The Clippers versus the Mavericks. Talk to me. Where do you think Milwaukee's going to end up in the Eastern Conference?
I think Milwaukee is going to have a very, very tough series either with Miami or Indiana. Because Indiana, they have those twin powers in Sabonis and Miles Turner. And then they also have Victor Oladipo. And then they got nice solid role players in between. So I wouldn't sleep on Indiana. They're a very young team, just like Miami. But with Miami, they have strength to Milwaukee's weakness. They have legit shooters. I mean, Milwaukee has shooters too, but they don't step up in the clutch. And I love Chris Middleton. He went off the other day. But I just haven't seen it in the playoffs. When Giannis, we all know Giannis is weak in his shooting range. So they need those players to step up, but they haven't in the playoffs in these last couple of years. So that's why I think Miami could capitalize and possibly even beat Milwaukee. Milwaukee's going to, I probably predict to sweep Orlando in the first round. But in that second round, it's going to get really tough, in my opinion.
So you think that you're saying in the second round is going to get tough for Miami against hello?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I thought you lost you for a second there.
No. So, yeah, no, definitely. I think Milwaukee will have a tough time with Miami or either Indiana in the second round.
So do you think? Well, I definitely feel like Indiana will get past the Heat. I definitely feel like that's going to happen. So if we're talking about the second round, I feel like, I don't think that Milwaukee is going to lose to the Pacers. I highly doubt that. I don't even feel like it's going to go past Game 5. I feel like you also got to remember Jeremy Lamb is out on injury, right? With the Pacers, you also have they have Sabonis is out on injury, so we don't know. Even if they do come back before, for the playoffs, we don't know how that's gonna affect the Pacers because they really don't have a full lineup when you look at it, or at least they have these two players out. You still have T.J. Warren that will step up. I'm pretty sure. Justin Holiday. You probably definitely see him step up. But Oladipo will definitely step up. But you're still going against probably, I wouldn't say confidently, probably the top, one of the top 5 teams in the NBA right now, which is Milwaukee. They have done a tremendous job. I think where Milwaukee's fault is, which won't be a problem with the Heat, is that they haven't been able to close the games, in a more comfortable state. I feel like it's still a struggle with them closing the games, especially against big teams. We've seen it with Houston. You've seen it with Dallas. So they are having tough times. I just don't feel like the Heat will be able to deliver the pressure needed in order for Milwaukee to crumble. I feel like that will be an easy second round win with the Heat. Giannis, I have to say he's been playing tremendously this whole season. Brook Lopez has even stepped it up since the restart of the season. Kyle Korver has stepped up. So you pretty much have a great team, I want to say, or a team on the verge of greatness. And I don't foresee them having too much trouble with the Heat.
I don't know. It's just for me because we're talking playoffs, and it's been the last couple of years. Milwaukee's come up short, and they do great in the season. We have plenty of teams that do great in the season. Just like the Houston Rockets, they do great in the season, but then what happens in the playoffs? And I don't see Milwaukee choking against a Philadelphia or Toronto. I think they can beat those teams. I really think their tough challenge is going to be Miami and Indiana, especially if T.J. Warren can keep on playing on the level he's playing at right now. Mm-hmm. If T.J. Warren keep on this performance, it's going to be scary because we haven't even talked about Victor Oladipo yet, who we know can ball out. He's been kind of playing that side role now that Warren's just exploding right now. So if both of them can play good together going into the playoffs, especially with Miles Turner and Sabonis, I think they're going to be a very tough challenge. I think I prefer Miami, but I still think I'll say this: I don't see my Milwaukee making it out that second round. I'll just say it bluntly. I'll see them coming out the second round.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to take opposite approaches on that one, or opinions, because I definitely see Milwaukee making it out the second round. I think the trouble comes when they have to either face. I don't think the Sixers is gonna beat Celtics, um, and I don't feel like the Nets is gonna get past the Raptors. I think the difficulty comes with whoever Milwaukee plays against, which I'm anticipating it to be the Raptors. I think that's where we're gonna see their greatest challenge come. And that is where I think they will fall at. I think Kyle Lowry, I think, Serge Ibaka are definitely going to be able to bring the pressure, stop these guys, and potentially be going to the finals against whoever takes the Western Conference finals. I feel like that's where they're going to see their most trouble at. Definitely, I don't foresee the Celtics getting past the Raptors right now. Jason Tatum is great. They have a good start lineup. Jaylen Brown has stepped up. Kemba Walker, Gordon Hayward, or it's just going to be tough, I think, for the Celtics to get past the Raptors this year in the Eastern Conference. And then I also feel like once the Milwaukee meets the Raptors in the Eastern Conference Finals, that's where they're going to fall. I think the pressure from these veterans like Serge Ibaka, Kyle Lowry, Terrence Davis, Marc Gasol, right? So that's where you're going to see them crumble, because these are experienced players, veterans, individuals that can definitely change Giannis's game, especially when it matters, right? We've seen the same thing happen when it came to Houston. We've seen the same thing happen when it came to Dallas. When it mostly matters, they are able to change the game of Giannis and some of the other players and then outscore them in the later rounds, in the later quarters. I think that's what's going to happen with Toronto. I feel like Milwaukee will lead in those finals, the Eastern Conference Finals, and then Toronto will take over in the second half. And I feel like that might be a game 6.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't see Boston beating Philadelphia either. They have a great team, but I just think Embiid is just gonna tear them apart. I mean, he kind of has to. If he doesn't, then I don't know. He has no excuse. They don't have Al Horford anymore, so Boston's completely exposed in the post. So Embiid should be averaging like 20 and 10 that whole entire series against Boston, like easily killing them. Them losing, Ben Simmons hurt Philadelphia a lot, but I do think it'll be enough. They'll make it. I think it'll be a tough battle against Boston. I do think they'll make it through that first round. Now, Toronto, I definitely pick Toronto in that series. Definitely easy to question. And that's why I think it's either going to be Toronto against Miami or Indiana in the Eastern Conference Finals. And then, but if Milwaukee were to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, that's tough. I think I'd probably pick Milwaukee because, as opposed to Miami and Indiana, Toronto doesn't have those shooters like that. Serge Ibaka is not bad. Van Fleet is not bad. Kyle Lowry, I'm not depending on. He's always inconsistent in the playoffs. So I think Milwaukee has a better chance against Toronto than, as crazy as it sounds, against Toronto than Miami and Indiana.
That's interesting. I don't see that. I think it's going to be a press in the East right now. I think the East has definitely stepped up their game, but I feel like every year is really about what the West is going to do. So we're looking at, in the Western Conference, we're looking at the Lakers, Grizzlies, right? We're looking at the Rockets, Thunders, most likely, Nuggets, Jazz, and probably Clippers and Mavericks. I feel like the West, you're going to see the Lakers easily get past Memphis. I think that's going to be a sweep. I don't foresee that being any challenge for the Lakers against Memphis. I feel like the Rockets and Thunder is going to be a long series, possibly Game 6. I would say, with the Rockets taking it. I think Nuggets Jazz will probably go to Utah. I'm giving that. I definitely feel like Jazz will be able to take the first round. especially if they strategically approach themselves. And then Clippers and Mavericks, I personally feel like that's going to be Clippers will take that easily, probably in Game 5. I'm giving the Mavericks one win out of that series for the first round. I think what we'll see in the Eastern Conference Finals, I personally feel like it's probably going to be Rockets Clippers.
Okay.
Western
Me,
Conference, I mean.
I it's tough to say because I'm really rooting for Portland, but it's just Phoenix isn't. They're just too. I feel like they're too deep down. They're at the 11th seed right now. They've won 5 straight, but they're still at that 11th seed. So, barring anything crazy, I think they're still probably not going to make it, even though they might even win out the whole entire regular season. But it just seems like they're just too far back to make it into the 8th seed. But with Portland, if they can sneak into that 8th seed and they're up right now in their game in the Memphis spot today, so I believe if Portland were to win their game today, they move up into that 8th spot. So if that happens and that stays that way, I'm taking Portland to beat the Lakers in the first round.
You think Portland to beat the Lakers first round?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Especially because we both saw that little tweet battle Damian Lillard and PG3 had going on Twitter and IG and stuff. They was beefing and stuff. So I think Dame is gonna have to remind people who he is. If they can make it into that final spot, I think Melo, everyone on that team has something to remind people. Everybody, McCollum, Lillard, Melo, everyone forgot about those guys. Everyone's just been sleeping on those guys, forgot how talented they are. I know we got LeBron and Anthony Davis, but I just feel like Portland's way too complete. They get everything you ever want. And just going from the home down the entire lineup. If the Lakers had Rondo and Avery Bradley, it'd be a whole different story because those are the 2 best defenders and those are the 2 best perimeter defenders. But they don't have either. So with me, Portland, I'm taking them over the Lakers in the first round. And then after that, it's going to be tough. After that, I'll probably take the winning their first round matchup. Utah, I don't see him winning against Denver. So I'll see Denver and Clippers in the second round. And then Houston and Portland in the second round. And then Western Conference Finals. I'll say Clippers and Portland.
I have to say, for Portland, I can't see them. I definitely don't see them being even possibly mentally capable of beating the Los Angeles Lakers at this point right now. I think that's a far stretch. That's really far. You're forgetting about Danny Green. You're forgetting about Dwight Howard. You're forgetting about JaVale McGee. Come on, forget about Kuzma, who's been shooting at a tremendous rate. LeBron James, Anthony Davis. Even though Rondo's not playing, and even though Avery Bradley, is out, you're still talking about some really good shooters. J.R. Smith will definitely be able to step up to the plate, at least defensively. I don't know if he'll be an offensive threat, but he'll definitely be able to step up defensively. I can't see Portland beating the Lakers. I definitely don't see it. I think the Lakers' biggest challenge is going to come down to the Rockets or the Clippers. And I think the best possible solution to beat the Lakers in a series is definitely going to be the Clippers. They're just more well-rounded. You have more experienced players, people that have been to finals, people that have accomplished so much in the years that they've been there. So I definitely can't see that occurring.
No, I didn't. J.R. Smith, they had that championship experience, making it to the finals and stuff. J.R. obviously winning with LeBron and stuff. But let's not forget about Portland now. They have Rodney Hood, Zach Collins, Nurkic, Trevor Ariza. They have solid role players. Anthony Tolliver, who's still a good shooter. Scott Labissiere, Kent Bazemore, remember, Kent Bazemore got paid big time when he was in Atlanta. He never really played up to that role. But don't sleep on Zach Collins and Hassan Whiteside and Nurkic. I'll take that three over Dwight Howard and Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis. I'll take that combo because they just have way more depth and they can rotate. I'll take Zach Collins and Hassan Whiteside over Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee. Like, what can JaVale McGee do? Okay, but is he a big contributor on offense?
JaVale McGee?
Yeah.
No, I think his biggest the way he's going to contribute is defensively. I definitely don't see it as being a big contributor on offense. Is he? I would say if you're thinking about point wise, he's probably bringing in this. He's probably going to give you about 6 points, right? 6 to 8 points, I would assume. But I think his biggest attribute out of everything is going to be, him on the blocks. He'll probably average about, 2 blocks to I'm assuming for the playoffs. As far as rebounds, I think he'll probably average about 4 to 5 on the defensive rebound tip. And offensive rebounds, he'll probably average about 6 or 7. So I think he's definitely going to be one of the top contributors in the sense of 9 points. And when I say 9 points, we're talking rebounds, defensive play more than anything. I definitely think he's going to be a contributor there. And then he's going to alter your shot, especially if you're coming in the middle. So that's where Houston's going to have the biggest challenge, right? Especially because they don't play big, they don't have a lot of big men play. They play a very small man game, I believe. And at the end of the day, the Clippers will probably have the best chance at defeating the Lakers in when they come against them. So I think that's going to be a huge challenge for the. I definitely think it's a huge challenge for Portland. I think it's an even harder challenge, or not really a harder challenge, a less harder challenge, or least amount of effort will be done for the Rockets if they face the Lakers. But I feel like they still won't win, and I think the best chance is the Clippers beating the Lakers.
Because here's the thing with Portland. They went to the Western Conference Finals last year. And of course, you weren't going to beat that loaded team in Golden State. But they went into the Western Conference Finals. And this whole entire season, they've dealt with terrible injury bugs. Nurkic was hurt. They got Whiteside late. Zach Collins was hurt most of the season. But we saw how talented he was last season. McCollum dealt with injuries. Didn't get Carmelo till later in the season. Like, this team never got to fully mesh. And they literally they should have won 4 out of their 5 games they've played post, in the bubble. So let's not act like they're just like some weak team. If they had their full team assembled back before the whole quarantine thing happened, they'd have a much better record. But they've dealt with plenty of injuries throughout the whole entire season. They're finally healthy now. They won 3 out of the last 5 games. It should have been 4, but Lillard missed a couple free throws in that last game. Let's not sleep on Portland. But even with that, Houston, the reason why I see Portland beating Houston as well is because I like Houston, but I just don't know if I can depend on Westbrook and Harden. I'm not sure about that. And them losing their center that they traded a while back, what's his name? That center that they traded, now that he's gone now, but they lost a huge interior defensive presence with that, and they have a hole in the middle. So they're gonna need something to combat that. I don't know if they're gonna sign a DeMarcus Cousins. If I would sign him before it's too late. It might be not the player he once was, obviously, but I'd pick him up because that'd be a huge pickup for them. But Houston, he's got too many weaknesses. I like Denver, but they're still very young. And then Clippers, I see him going probably all the way.
Yeah, I definitely think the Clippers. I think if the Clippers actually go all the way, this will be a testament to Kawhi Leonard's ability to lead a team. And I think you got to give Greg Popovich a tremendous amount of kudos for what he had done with Kawhi from the Spurs to we see him now and where he's actually how he's leading teams. Um, and I think we've seen it with Toronto right last year. He did a great job in the Spurs, and now we're seeing it in the Clippers. So if they were to beat the Lakers and get the Western Conference Finals championship, and then actually go to the finals, which I believe is going to be against Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee will be an easy win for them. I don't think Milwaukee's experienced enough to go against the Clippers. And then I just feel like what Kawhi brings to the table, I think ultimately it would lead him to us to saying that he's probably, if not one of the top 10 players in right now, I would say in the last 15 years or maybe for 10 years in the NBA. We have seen him lead numerous teams into finals, win numerous finals, and I think when you look at it in general, that's just a tremendous effort from Kawhi, and I think he has such a great presence on the team. I think he brings chemistry. I think he does a lot of things that great players do, right? And I think he's going to be able to lead not only the Clippers, I think wherever he goes, they're going to end up in the finals and possibly taking a championship.
Yeah, definitely. I see the West beating whoever, even if Miami makes it, even if Philadelphia makes it, Toronto. I don't see them beating the Clippers, whoever it is that makes it out in the West. They just don't compare enough, especially when you have those huge stars over in the Western Conference. Not to say Eastern doesn't have stars either, but just doesn't match up to the Western Conference. So, but I'll give you this: if you want to talk ratings and stuff like that, especially with the whole IG thing that happened we just talked about earlier. And my mistake on the whole Clint Capella thing, I blanked on his name. I was talking about the Rockets, the old Rockets. I meant to say Clint Capella, but I digress. Um, wouldn't you want at this point now? Wouldn't you want a Portland versus the Clippers in the East Western Conference Finals because of that whole beef thing that happened a couple days ago? We're
So,
talking like ratings and stuff.
so you're saying for Western Conference Finals, we would want to see Portland versus Clippers?
Yes.
I don't think it'd be interesting. I feel like I want to see 6 games. I don't want to see 5. I don't want to see 4. Um, I don't think I would want to see ultimately Houston Clippers or Clippers Lakers, which is most likely going to be Clippers Lakers. So I don't want to. I don't think these other teams could bring the amount of intensity, the amount of expertise that's needed to go into these Western Conference Finals and then give us a display, a show, something that we can actually watch and say, yeah, we were interested to watch. I don't think Portland can do that at all. I feel like also if you're looking at just other teams, I don't think the Nuggets or the Jazz could do that. So, I think the Grizzlies definitely won't even make it past the first round, but the Thunder, not this year. They won't be able to give us 6 games in the Western Conference Finals. So I prefer to see the Clippers Lakers. I think that would be probably even a Game 7 ultimately. If I had to do any predictions, that would be a Game 6, Game 7. I don't feel like the Clippers will get that too easy. And I definitely feel like even if the Lakers were to take that round, they would not get that too easily against the Clippers. So it would definitely be a challenge. It would be more interesting to see those two teams go at it, especially with the players that they have on it. Yeah, all of the antics and the hype is all fun, but ultimately I want to see good basketball. And when you talk about the Lakers, you're going to see that. When you talk about the Clippers, you're going to see that. I agree with you on Houston. Houston, you don't know what you're going to get, and historically we have seen Harden, make some big mistakes in the playoffs. So we don't know what we'll get from Houston, especially going into the Western Conference Finals. So that's up for grabs. And Westbrook, I think he's out for today's games, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know if some of these players are going to be out injured after the first round or during the first round. So if I had to bank on players showing up and I had to bank on based on injury frequency, I think the Lakers and the Clippers will bring us the best game, the most consistent, and they'll get us probably 6 or 7 in the Western Conference Finals if they go at it.
Okay.
Yeah, but talk about the Lakers. Interesting comment made by LeBron James, referring to Trump's that he's not interested pretty much in watching the NBA because players are kneeling. How do you feel about that comment, and what's your thoughts on Trump even bringing that type of energy to the NBA, who's I think is extremely progressive, allowing players to express themselves. We've seen it in their jerseys. We have seen it in just their language. And the NBA has been extremely open to allowing the players to express themselves in any means necessary, by any means necessary. And then we see the president of the United States saying, "Well, hey, look, I'm not going to support the NBA because they're kneeling." LeBron James basically said that it's not a sad day for him, and he pretty much he can care less if Trump is watching them or not, and I think that's commendable on his part. I think that's a big statement for him to say. He's talking about the president. I don't think there's any good or political way to go against any president, especially of the United States. So, how do I personally feel like Trump did a horrific job at that. I think he's not encouraging behavior and mindedness when it comes to racism, I should say. Um, and this has been a continuous problem, and I think Trump has only showed us what he would do if he gets another 4 years in presidency, which is a very scary time. And I think the players have to be encouraged by not only the NBA but people outside of the NBA that it's okay to behave the way that they're behaving because they're supporting ultimately a goal and they're supporting equality. And Trump is just pretty much just shunning the NBA and saying that this isn't acceptable behavior, which I think is extremely disgusting and should not even be told, especially publicly.
Now, at the end of the day, the main thing, I'll go into it more, but the main thing is that we all don't care. We could care less. You're not watching the NBA. Okay, I didn't even see Trump as the type of guy to even watch the NBA in the first place.
Right.
So it's not like, oh my God, such a big deal. But again, he is our president, so you want him to back our players. But we've seen it with the NFL. He didn't back them when they were kneeling. He was against it. He's against the kneeling. You never really heard him speak out against racism. The only thing you've ever heard him say when it comes to racism talks is unemployment rate. I don't know what unemployment rate has to do with Black people, but he always brings that up every time people try to ask him about racism and racist issues and stuff like that. So we've seen before. We don't have to do the name calling and stuff like that. We've just seen it through our eyes, just based off of the fact he's never really stood up for racism subjects and stuff like that. We never hear him say, this is wrong, this is right. We've seen the protest in Virginia. He said there's some good people in those protests, even though a lot of those people were KKK members and stuff like that. So we've already seen where he stands on certain issues when it comes to stuff like this. Yes, it's disappointing because he's our president. He should support our national basketball league. But at the end of the day, people around the world know what kind of leader he is. So it's not a big deal and it won't affect us that way. But I will say the positive about this is that we got his attention. Well, at least the NBA has his attention. Because again, I don't think Trump was ever the kind of guy that was really looking at NBA to begin with. But the protesting and all that stuff got Trump's attention. That's a positive sign. Because if I got Trump's attention, then I got Trump supporters' attention. Maybe even though you might not change Trump's perspective on things, you're able to change Trump's peers or followers' perspective on things because they're not as how would I say cocky or arrogant as Trump is, or they might not have they may be more open-minded as opposed to Trump. So overall, I'd say you have to look at it through a positive note. Yes, he didn't stick up for us, but we got his attention. So
Yeah, I think attention and basically saying, well, we're not, I'm not going to do this and this is why. I think, it's two different topics, right? I always say, good or bad attention is sometimes great for a cause, right? Hopefully it's not for the bad intention, but I think when we paint a picture on kneeling as being something that's against the American flag or being against America, you really are enticing individuals that might not ultimately be racist at no point, but you're enticing them to feel like, hey, well, anybody that's kneeling, they're kneeling against the flag and they're kneeling against America, and forgetting that the kneel is really about the treatment of blacks. Um, and when the president says comments like that, I just feel like it's extremely insensitive. Um, I think you're really promoting people not to speak their mind because there's not that many strong people that will do that. We've seen it. We've seen some players stand up during the national anthem while others kneel, and they won't even. Those players won't even support their other brothers and sisters, whether white or black, during this time. So when we make that commentary, it kind of forces individuals to act a certain way because not everybody's strong enough, like some players, to feel like, well, hey, I can lose everything tomorrow. I might not get these endorsements, but I'm willing to fight for what I believe is right and believe is true. So the president is, I think, at this particular time when we look at a more recent incident like John Neville, and we've seen how those 4 or 5 correction officers and that nurse handled him when he died in that cell. It's disgusting. It's disgusting for the president to even infer or even say blatantly, explicitly, the way that he does, that people should not protest and people should feel some type of way when people are protesting by kneeling. We've seen the behaviors that's exhibited by police officers in this country towards black. We've seen the behaviors that exhibited by extreme racist white individuals to blacks throughout this country. And I think even if I was white, I think we can ultimately say the behavior is inhumane, right? And you have to be a really sick person to think that any type of behavior that we have endured is acceptable, is something that you feel like we should not be behaving a certain type of way. Ultimately, who are you as a white person to feel how somebody should protest or behave when it comes to displaying anger or displaying any type of I want to say protestability. Oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. I think that's disgusting as a white person for you to tell me how to feel as a black individual. So when you see the president say, hey, I don't want to support the NBA because of this, it kind of feels like that. You can't tell somebody how to protest. You should respect their ability and their reasons that they're doing it peacefully, because it could be done another type of way or in a more aggressive way. And they're not. They're protesting, I think, in the right way to bring some publicity around some of the issues that's going on in America. And it's sad to say that, cops are not trained well. And when we just look at cops, that's just one sector, right? That's just one sector compared to the many, I want to say, extreme racist white individuals in this country that do some even more horrific things to individuals that don't look like no other black, Spanish, or any type of nationality that they deem is less important to them. So to hear the president speak like that, somebody that is running for office again, it's kind of disgusting. It's kind of, it brings a lot of discontent to, I would say, the black population should feel some type of way when they hear comments like that, because ultimately you're telling me how to behave when I'm angry. And, I think right now a lot of African Americans, a lot of Latinos, a lot of minorities have reasons to be very angry. We've seen the behavior of these cops. We've seen the behavior of some of the extreme racist white individuals at his rallies as well, right? And not once has he said anything about that. Not once has he made a comment like, don't do this, don't do that, don't behave like this, don't do that. So it is troubling that we hear Trump say such comments and put NBA players in a light of negativity when they're just trying to do what's right for the people.
Yeah, definitely. And we even seen it with John Lewis, who recently passed away. Trump didn't really have anything positive to say about that whole thing, and he didn't even go to the guy's funeral. And plenty of former presidents go to the funeral and stuff like that. So we already see. We don't have to see it. We know where Trump stands on certain issues, and we know what side he stands on. I think by now, most black people should see that. Yes, it is disappointing that our own president doesn't back us, but at this point, we just have to just see that, okay, we have to use this as an educational thing. We have to see, okay, we can't vote for someone like this again. So even though it might not be this election, for the next election after this, just be way more active, just be way more knowledgeable, especially with local elections and stuff like that. Just be more aware of who leaders are, what they stand in, and what they stand by, and just be more aware of their political mindset and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't really, at this point, we shouldn't really care what Trump says because we know he's not going to support us. It's disappointing, yes, but we should not be surprised.
Absolutely.